Well, it's Hotline League episode 163. Excited to be back here as we are every week. Now, some of you might be wondering if you're watching live, well, isn't this a little different? Because it's 1 hour earlier than normal. Yes, we've officially moved the show 1 hour earlier to 7 p.m. Pacific. Maybe some of the people that couldn't watch it live before now can. We did this because Mark actually films the dive really early in the morning on Monday, right?
Yeah, call time is either 9:30 or 10 a.m. So I was usually starting my day at 10, my work day at 10, and ending my work day at 10 p.m. And that was a little long. And then on top of that, Ashley would usually go to bed around like 9:45 or 10. And then like honestly, our show never fucking ended at 10. We ended at 10:20 like every time, you know?
Yeah.
And so like by that point, she's been in bed 20 minutes. She's like, shut the hell up. And yeah, so.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's funny about this was I suggested it to Mark last week. I was like, "Oh, we could maybe move this up," and like, I was like, "Well, maybe we'll do one at the regular time next week." So that he's like, "No." Immediately after hearing this idea, he was like, "We're doing it. The show next week is starting at 7." I'm like, "Okay." Now, of course, the show is brought to you by Alienware and Gamefield. We'll talk more about them later on in the show. But let's go ahead and introduce our co-host for the evening. That's Emily Rand. How's it going, Emily?
Good. I'm doing well.
Very good. Well, it's great to be having you on the show again. For those that don't know, Emily and I actually worked together at Yahoo Esports a long time ago. So
I miss it still.
For a very long time. Yes, we all miss it. I see some people in the chat saying that I'm kind of quiet. So
you sound good to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, you sound fine to me, but I feel like Mark and I probably aren't the.
So I think I had Mark and Emily turned up a lot because I was doing like a interview with somebody this past weekend and they were kind of quiet. So now we should all sound quiet, which hopefully will allow all of you or allow everyone to move everybody up. But Twitch chat, if you can keep letting me know, that would be.
Look at what a good screenshot that one was. I didn't time it, but Emily throwing up gang signs. Travis looking kind of surprised.
Just doing a peace sign.
That's so good.
Throwing up gang signs.
That's so good.
Get out of here.
It's a good screen cap. Usually it's not that good.
Anyway, Mark, how's your week been? What's been going on with you?
I don't know. I watched a couple movies. I watched Raya. I watched something else that I can't remember. Some anime. Jujutsu Kaisen's latest episode is dope. Horimiya's latest episode is dope. They're both really, really funny. Raya I didn't love. I thought it was just mediocre. God, I watched another movie this week, but I can't remember what it was. That I didn't like it. I don't think I liked it.
It's funny you say that because I went and watched WandaVision. I finally subscribed to Disney Plus and I watched WandaVision and then I started watching back a bunch of the old Marvel movies, kind of from the beginning, skipping.
We're doing that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We skipped a bunch of the beginning too. We kind of picked up with Civil War because I'd never seen that. We're around there, I think.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
I tweeted this. I was going to say I tweeted this the other day, but I've never seen a Marvel property.
Really?
Ever. I don't think, yeah.
Is there a moral reason for that?
No, I'm really bad about watching movies in general. Like I probably won't watch them unless someone recommends it to me and or makes it a point to be like, hey, we're hanging out and we're watching like X movie. Because I watched too much League of Legends. And last year I watched too much literally everything and had no free like I joke about how I don't sleep, but like last year was just I'm actually probably still recovering from it, to be quite honest.
You were rewarded for all that work by losing your job.
It's very unlucky.
But how about you, Emily? How's your past week been?
It's been good. LPL came back, so that's made me very, very happy. I am really behind on anime. The only one that I've made an effort to keep up with is Wonder Egg Priority, and they had a surprise recap episode last week, which on the one hand kind of sucks. On the other hand, production is probably like going through it. So if that means that we end up with a better product, it's not the kind of show that you can really phone in, at least from like a conclusion standpoint. So it's been really good up to now, and everyone's kind of wondering like, is the other shoe going to drop, because it's handling a lot of really topics that require a lot of nuance. So whenever an anime does that, you're kind of just sitting there like, are you going to be able to pull this off? Because most can't. So
I have
that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at
all the time with anime. That's my constant.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
I'm always watching a lot of crazy anime. Well, that's good. Glad to hear it. I thought maybe we could just do a quick little interview, as we used to do this more with some of our guests, but I think we've had so many repeats recently. But Emily, I mean, how has this year been for you? Because you and I both miss Yahoo, and I miss working with some of those people, but I do look at sort of what I get to do now, and as much as I miss the people, I do feel like Yahoo Esports going away did end up working out kind of well for me, because I never would have thought that I'd have this kind of success. You now on the broadcast, doing all this stuff. I mean, that's really exciting. So I'm kind of curious, what has this year been like for you as you transitioned over?
It's been really weird, honestly. Like, last year was such a, I don't want to say slog, but like I was doing so much stuff and I was pushing myself so hard to do all of this stuff that when I didn't have anything to do, I kind of just like was just like, oh crap, like what is life even? Kind of one of those weird like existential crises. So when I was contacted to be a part of NA LCS, I had actually applied to do something possibly with the global team, whatever that was. And so I was really shocked that they wanted me for the desk, because as you know, I didn't do video content until I came to Yahoo pretty much.
Yeah.
And previously people had always kind of pigeonholed me, where they'd been like, you're not good on video, just stick to being a writer. Like I've been told that a lot, actually. So the overwhelming amount of support that I've received for being on broadcast has actually been like quite shocking to me. I was expecting to just have to like have to like really, really be like, okay, like I promise I'll get better, and I will get better. I don't think I'm like particularly good right now, to be quite honest, but it's been like the amount of people have been really supportive has been really overwhelming in like the best way possible. So I'm really happy with where I'm at right now, and I have other things in the works too that will probably be announced within the next like few weeks or so. So that'll be fun, and I'm going to get back into writing at some point. I've had kind of a weird mental block around that, because I've been sitting on an interview that I did with my favorite player all the way back in 2019 Worlds that I really want to get out, and I'm just kind of have this like mental block around it. So it'll come out sometime in the next month, and then hopefully I'll start writing again. Yeah.
Very good.
I think you've been pretty good on the broadcast, all things considered. I think with having to come in at remote, it's not the easiest. There's like a lot of things that I miss being in person that we just don't have access to, whether that is like, hand gestures to be like, I'm talking next. Like the period system that we use in Discord is like fine, but it's so much harder to jump in. Like, oh, I have a quick point, like you do like this excited finger wag. Like there's no like way to like do excited period, like sometimes I write in specifically like small point here, or whatever, but like just the level of cohesiveness on the desk is worse. Like planning things is worse, because like when I want to review a replay that we're calling up in studio, I just like walk over to the room where the fucking people are making the replay, and I get to be do this here, do that there, and like I don't know. I think you've done very well, given that the current workflow is very suboptimal.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you've done really well too, and obviously the community and everyone seems to have reacted really positively to it. And I know you're somewhat surprised by that. I'm somewhat surprised by it, not just because, like, not because I think that you aren't worth it or anything like that, but I just, in the past, the community has been really shitty, I think, sometimes to just people that are new faces or women or any of this stuff. And so I think it's been great to see there was so much love for you right out the gate. So I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah, it makes me really happy. So thank you, community.
Well, regardless, let's go ahead and talk about what were the big stories this past week. Actually, overall, kind of like a quiet week for drama. I guess I would say. I will do my thing that I said that I will do at the start of every show now, which is say that it's been 5 weeks since I asked Riot for a statement, and they have provided no statement on the LCS import rule stuff. We'll continue that until they do. But other than that, it's been just a week mostly of the games, right? Is there anything that I'm missing?
I mean, the games and the weekend were pretty exciting. It was a really good weekend.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Thank
It's like
God. Yeah.
the first week in a while where I feel like the best stories, the biggest stories, are all from the broadcast and the games themselves. So it's really exciting to see. Actually, I was going to ask you guys, what is this thing that just broke around pro player accounts getting deleted? Did you guys see this?
There was
I
a
haven't seen that.
at the start of the year, there were a lot of not even just pro accounts, but like Riot given accounts, which I think also extended to players who were not pros. And they had been given kind of inflated MMR. I think around like I'm totally spitballing here, but it was like a round challenger MMR, and so people were like flying up the rankings, and like people who had been like mid to low diamond were now like getting insane LP gains and were like flying up the ranking. And so a bunch of people were like, how is this Diamond 2 guy or like Diamond 4 guy in like my high masters game now or shit like that, you know, like it was something really whack like that. And then people were complaining for a long period of time, way back at the start of like the ranked season. And now they're just saying like, oh yeah, those accounts were fucked up, and they are basically nuking those ones and giving appropriately placed MMR ones.
Interesting. Okay.
So I don't think it was really a pro player issue so much as like all Riot issued accounts were kind of just given the same MMR. I think maybe not all of them, but at least like a good some portion of them. It was kind of weird.
Interesting.
I didn't know about this until you mentioned it, so I'm probably the worst person to ask.
No, go ahead.
I hadn't seen anyone talk about it in months, honestly. I saw it like right when ranked season opened, you know, like whatever that was, January, February. Yeah.
Well, regardless, doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal. But I guess it's kind of funny that this was an issue.
I think it's a big deal for like people who spam play the game a lot in high elo, because like there's a bunch of people who shouldn't be in your games and taking up spots on the ladder. It has like it has a knock-on effect to people who didn't have like the bad accounts, having to play against people or with people with the bad accounts, and like it just kind of threw the whole top of the system into trouble.
Yeah, I guess I meant more just like it getting fixed. Doesn't sound like it's not like a bunch of pro players are like, or like whatever Riot made accounts or whatever are going to be in a weird situation. I don't know.
It's probably a little annoying for the pro players. I think they have to probably regrind their accounts a little bit.
Yeah.
If they're using those for their solo queue.
Well, let's talk about the games this weekend then. I just want to give a big shout out to myself for accurately calling that CLG beating Team Liquid game, because I just like Mark makes fun of me so often for providing admittedly narrative driven analysis, because there's no way that I can ever create good analysis because I'm an idiot. But I just was sitting there before, like as they were getting in a champ selector right beforehand, I was like, what would be the most LCS thing in the world? It would be for Team Liquid to right now just randomly lose to CLG. Like, it's such a CLG situation. It's such like an LCS thing. And boom, it happened. And I called it on Twitter. I felt really good about that. But other than that, there were some other stories. Dignitas continues to be good against all odds. I remember...
against all logic and common sense, Dignitas is not...
Well, I think what's funny is we talked about them a couple of weeks ago. We had like a caller or somebody call in and be excited about them, and I was like, "This is the Dignitas story. They're always really good at the start of the split, and then they drop off." And I'm wondering if perhaps the fact that it's only 6 weeks of a split, it actually helps them, because maybe they would drop off in week 7 or 8, and now they can't because there's no week 7 or 8. It's a Dignitas buff. But I don't know, what else did you two enjoy this past weekend?
I've enjoyed C9 going 1 and 2. Just for the kind of last second question mark thrown in at the end of the regular split, because it did feel like they were kind of running away with it. TL beating them kind of gave TL a little bit of hope, but then also losing the TSM meant like, oh crap, TSM might actually be good too. Yeah.
How about you, Emily? Anything from this weekend that you really were excited about or that you thought was fun?
I mean, as people know, if they've seen me on broadcast, I really like watching this Dignitas team. I think they're really fun, despite the fact that you can also very easily make the argument that they're benefiting off of a lot of things that their opponent, a lot of mistakes that their opponents make. I think TSM doing well kind of makes me happy, because I kind of always want Sword Art to do well, especially as someone who's coming over from like LPL LMS to NA. And just generally, I think he is a really good player, but he's also not going to look particularly good on a team until that team's communication gets sorted out. So this actually happened when he was on Suning too. And it's been very nice to see the transition now on TSM, where as the team seems more comfortable and seems to have a better communication system with each other. He looks a lot better, because he's always going to be someone who's better out of lane as a roamer, etc. So I actually think Huni is very similar. I think Huni is always going to look better on a team that has strong communication as well, because he also likes TPing all over the map to help his teammates, etc. sometimes when he shouldn't. So I think a lot of the quote unquote problems, or like the good Huni, bad Huni, I think actually has a lot to do with just generally, if a team's communication is really good, he's going to look really good.
Kelsey Moser in chat says, did anyone mention Player of the Week Fake God?
No.
Kelsey knew it all along.
Did you? Why do you have such an immediate reaction?
Oh, I'm just trolling, because no one wants to talk about NA players, especially young ones on.
I mean, it is really funny that Dignitas is like having such a great record this year.
I mean, the funny thing is,
there's been so much talk about this.
The only person you could argue that was snubbed by Fake God getting that was Neo, his own teammate.
Was his own teammate, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Do you think that's because like Dignitas is actually looking that good, or is it just the weird inconsistency that we're seeing in the league right now, where like you do have things where TL beats C9 one day and the next day they lose to CLG? Like, what do you think is really causing that?
Well, I think if you're looking at like how we vote for Player of the Week, or like what?
No, I just mean like
how Dignitas is good.
Well, I guess I should say like, yeah, is Dignitas really that good? Like, whenever people are talking about the best players in the league, do we need to start bringing Fake God and Neo into those conversations, or is it just that we're in a situation where like the people that fans thought and analysts or whatever were going to be the best players in the league, like Perks and others, are somewhat underperforming compared to what people expected from them as like stars in the league?
I mean, I don't think Perks has been underperforming particularly, but with Fake God in particular and Sligo, I think there's always this weird stigma where people make up their minds really quickly about players off of like 2 performances. So like when people thought of Sligo, they thought of like one bad performance he had in a situation where he was kind of rushed onto the stage, perhaps before he was ready. But if there's one thing I want to call out Dignitas for doing well, and that doesn't apply to their last draft, if I remember correctly, but for a lot of their drafts, it really looks like you're rotating around the flexibility of Dardok's champion pool, and then you're basically saying to the rest of the team, okay, what do you play well? And that's a really good strategy. Like, I know a lot of people get criticized for drafting in a vacuum, and rightfully so, because I do think it's a problem. But I also think that there's a lot to be said for drafting for your players and making sure they're on things that they are comfortable on. And I do think Dignitas does that. I also just think they have really good hands. So when you team fight them, they're typically just especially with the new solo lanes and how well Neo has been playing, which actually has surprised me more than the success of Fake God and Sligo, based on their previous performances. But they kind of just out team fight you a lot of the time, which is just for me, as someone who also just watches a ton of LPL, it was very fun.
Yeah.
To circle back to like the broader, is it other teams sucking or Dig being good? I mean, I think it's a little column A, column B. Like this weekend had a lot of upsets in that sense with C9 losing, and then TL getting their 3-0 ruined by CLG, and Dig beating TSM, and Dig being the only 3-0 team. I think it was kind of a bit of a perfect storm, and their players played well. And I think like regardless of any of that, and like is Dig overperforming and whatnot, like they're clearly better than we thought at the start of the year. So like it's kind of one of those things where I feel like some people are still looking at reasons to put them down, and it's like, okay, yeah, if you want to be negative, like they're probably not going to win the split, and they might not go to Worlds. But this is a team that was like, you know, all NA players. No one thought was going to be making playoffs this split, and here it is, like currently tied for second, heading into the last, you know, thing. So it's like, yeah, you can take the really negative angle if you want, but like it's actually still an insanely good split for them, and probably going to be a whole year that's like really, really good.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should go into calls now. Mark, do you want to explain? It's been a couple weeks since we've done this. Do you want to explain how the show works?
Yeah, for people who don't know, this is a live call-in show, so you're going to be able to go ahead and get on air if you want to. The way that you do that is we have a Discord that we use. I am spamming it in Twitch chat right now. Go ahead. Ooh, not a single V in there. Let's go. You're going to join the Discord, join the Pleb Calls or Pleb Calls 2 voice channels, and mute your microphone once you get in there. No mouth breathers, please. Then in the Pleb Topics text channel, you're going to go ahead and put it as what that you want to talk about, which team you think's doing well, player, scene type questions, anything, specific questions for Emily. You know, of course, we'll take those. And then if we like it, we'll pull you from the Pleb Calls room to the waiting room where you'll hang out until it's your turn. We'll do a quick audio check when it is, make sure your microphone's working, and then we'll have you on air talking with us.
And if you are a sub, first off, thank you for being a sub. If you aren't a sub, then no thank you to you. But be sure to use the sub topics chat. It does move a little slower than the pleb topics chat, so it doesn't guarantee you coming on. Like if you have a bad take, that would not be good for the show.
It's just more readable.
Yeah. So, but be sure to do that, and then that does increase your chance of being on the show. Thank you to our subs for doing that. Duke17 in chat has been spamming, please address Dig strength of schedule, please. Basically saying that this week was really easy for them. Next week is going to be really tough.
I don't think this week was that easy for them, right? Didn't they have 2 playoff tier opponents? They
had Golden Guardians, EG, and TSM. Yeah.
Yeah. So TSM, and then I think the big thing is EG because people don't really know where to place them. But I do agree that looking at their final week, they have a tough week.
Yeah, they have TL and Cloud9 next week. So
I mean, who knows where EG like? There's a chance EG falls out of playoffs, but assuming that they stay where they are ish, like they're still a playoff bound team. This is still a team that spent millions more dollars, probably. You know, like, they play TL, C9, and FlyQuest next week, so they can go 1-2 and still finish with a super positive record on the year, right? It'd be like 11-7 if they do that. Let me double check.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11-7. Who put that one down on your little pick'ems at the start of the year?
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Mark will go grab our first caller here in a second. But as that's happening, I want to shout out some subs. Thank you to Rurikiri, A Nasty Orange, MSU Gerard, Zushi. Where are we? Core user Twitch gifted a sub. Maury Wakes, Darking, 37 months. Holy moly. Blank 27 paid 6 months in advance of subs. Thank you, Blank. Holy moly. Cole Kolath, Haramos, Ender, Kira NB, LOL Tyler 1, spelled Juan. That's great. Gundram and Jobadiah gifted a sub as well. Looks like we got our first caller here. Josh 8 Far is here. Josh, you were on very recently, right?
I was the last caller you guys had, yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome back to the show. What do you want? Oh, sorry. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Fairfax, Virginia.
Fairfax, Virginia. That's right. What do you want to talk about on the show?
This is directed more towards Emily and Mark as their on-air talent for the LCS broadcast. Obviously, last episode, you guys had a caller that I believe you pulled from his stream talk about turnover. And with big names like Doublelift and Bjergsen being cycled out and a lot of new players coming in, I think there's a distinct lack of editorial coverage for new players. Obviously, Travis fills a void here, but he can't do all of the work, and not a lot of other editorial content and interview-based content is out there besides like post-game discussions. And I think that that is causing a lot of people to move towards those personalities that they are comfortable with co-streams, with Sneaky and Doublelift, and Medios, and even LS, a personality that's been developed, has co-streams as well. So I really think, or my question is, are you guys comfortable right now with the current broadcast analyst desk where there's Dash comes up with skits and you guys have like the McDonald's thing, or do you think the LCS could better utilize its editorial talent to create narratives around these new players and maybe give these players an introduction towards the LCS stage?
First things first, I have to defend James. He's not funny at coming up with skits. Those are all me.
Dash,
So
by
you
the way.
know, yeah. It's if you don't like the skits, it's not Dash's
Oh
fault.
no, I love the skits. I think they're great. I'm just curious if you think there's maybe a medium that could be struck.
Yeah. I was mostly kidding. It's a team thing. Everyone has like a meeting that we do on Mondays that we come up
Yeah.
with ideas and stuff. So, just didn't want Dash to become the target
get
if
flamed.
someone didn't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
I'll take some of this because I am new to the broadcast, so I've previously been really critical of it publicly, and I used to, and still am. Like I said, I'm going to be writing, and I don't know, maybe doing some video interviews as a journalist. I think the thing that I've found super difficult about transitioning to the analyst desk that has a lot to do with this is the fact that you have such a limited amount of time. And you're going to a really wide audience. So unfortunately, one of the things that happens is that you end up doing something where you kind of have to make it as broad as possible. I've really struggled with this analytically. If you notice, sometimes I start speaking really, really fast because I try to add in like so much context analytically, and I'm trying to like shove it in because I know I only have a few minutes to speak. And that's not like a criticism. It's just something that happens, right? Because we have a really limited amount of time to dispense information. Do I think the broadcast could do a better job with player narratives? Yes, I do. Like I hold myself accountable for that, not just now on the analyst desk, but previously as a journalist. I think it's really easy to fall into gravitating towards personalities that people already know, people that are going to be really, really good on camera. One thing that I think is kind of awesome that I want to call out is something like Fake God, for example, where this kid is hilarious. I love his interviews so much. He's so funny. I don't think he means to be. He's great. It's like insanely charming to me. The kind of like balance he strikes between like being like incredibly blunt and like just slightly awkward. I think it's great. And I think like showcasing that a lot more, bringing out referencing, I try to reference the interviews as much as possible on there. Something that I don't want to spoil, but that we're going to do on broadcast this coming week might help with that as well. I also thought last week or the week before, maybe whenever Gyoto was on, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, so I'm sorry. I think he had some good thoughts about how to help the process of building up younger players. Another thing I do want to call out that is a really big struggle for me personally. I know last year when I was a journalist, I felt really inadequate trying to write around the fact that I could not interview people in person. And it's such a valuable experience to be able to go off of people's body language and, just kind of like generally get a sense of who they are, what they do, have more time with them, probably just be able to, like, if it's a new player, for example, who's like really uncomfortable with the interview, open up with something like game specific, just randomly like shoot the shit about the game. That really helps get people open up, and that maybe that part just gets axed from the interview completely, but the end result is that that player is a lot more comfortable, so they come across a lot better. sorry, I'm trying to cram in everything I can think of, but like it's a lot. It's nuanced. I don't disagree with you actually. I think we could do better. I'm always the kind of person, if you ask though, that I always think I personally can do better. Yeah, that is the end of my answer.
Someone in the Discord Pleb Topics chat that I don't want to pull because it kind of ties into this is, why doesn't the LCS highlight the POG awards like they do in other major regions? Which is funny because Emily, in one of our meetings today, brought up wanting to do that a little bit more often about who is getting the player of the games.
You spoiled it, Mark. That was the thing
Oh,
I was
was that
saying.
the
I didn't
thing?
want to spoil it. Yeah, that's coming this week.
Whoops.
Are we allowed to say that? I don't know. I wasn't sure if we were allowed to say
You
it.
guys, hey, it's you.
Too late
You guys
now.
are allowed to say anything you talk about in meetings here. Okay, I have no issue with that. Feel free to talk about any news that you hear, or any information from the meetings.
Well, if it's on me, it's on Mark. So don't fire me, please.
No one from Riot watches this show. Travis is on it, so
I'll just check and make sure Sherman's not
Get
in
outta
the
here.
chat.
And,
He literally
Sherman's
typed
probably
something.
in chat.
Sherman is in the chat, okay, and also Riot PR is in the chat, okay. Well, at least Mark still has Hotline League.
So I was gonna say that I think I definitely agree with Emily that I think we could do a better job. Part of it is I think I miss being in studio and like the ease of like, hey, what usually happened at the end of day was that players would get a features interview, which would be like they would go after their match, they do all their stuff with their fans, they do these greetings outside, sign stuff, and they would come back in, and you would usually grab a player from that day's games and interview them that night about, hey, what went wrong today? What do you think about your match tomorrow, kind of thing, and then that would get cut up and put into little things. And that's just not there anymore.
So they do something, because like when I didn't get Vulcan, and I thought it was because Jack was trying to stop me from talking to Vulcan, Jack claimed that it was because Riot had interviews with him. So
I mean, I'm sure there's still some. I don't, and maybe it's because it's remote. I don't know if this is going on as much, but I remember being in meetings and like the person who was doing the interviewing would be like, hey, so I talked to this player today. And even if we didn't use it on camera, she would tell us like, hey, this player felt this way about this game and he said this about that thing. And like, I just don't hear that at all anymore, when I used to hear it quite literally every meeting I was in. So I do think part of it's that, but I also don't want to blame that on fully on remote, because like we should be finding ways to better integrate player personalities, especially when so many of the big ones have retired, that like we need to get players authentically in front of the main audience and be like, look at this guy, he just won the game. And also look at how funny he is, or whatever, or like how insightful he is, and like, or watch him talk shit. Like there's a lot of different personality types that I think we can cater to beyond just funny or shit talking, like, I don't know. I would like to find more, more avenues to do this.
I know this is just going to be Travis complaining about and making this about me. But that's what I do here.
Wait, so real quick, Sherman says we still do request interviews of specific players throughout the week for content the following week. So I knew we had some, like we do have some features and stuff like that. I don't know what the bandwidth is compared to what it was when it was like, okay, every single player basically had to do these these feature interviews.
Yeah. Well, regardless, one of the things that drives me crazy is like, I was thinking a lot about this after we had Kyoto on, or Andre on last week, whenever he was talking about like trying to drive the rivalries and all that stuff. Like I've tried to do this a lot this split, and one of the things I did this past week was I had that interview with Clozer where he basically was like, yeah, I don't think TSM's that big of a deal, we could take them in a best of 5, like I think my 5 players are better than their 5 players. And that's the type of thing where, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, like Riot is more than willing to take, or I'm more than willing to have Riot take my interviews that I do and like air them on the broadcast, clips of them. They can pull the branding out of them, and they can pull my face out of them because I record 2 separate videos, and they can just use that during the COVID time. Like there's a lot of stuff that I try to do with my content specifically to try to drive narrative, and then I like headline it certain ways and all that stuff. And I would love to see more of the stuff be.
I mean,
even if it's not the video itself, just like the storyline recognized on the broadcast.
Mhm.
You know,
well, that one was.
I've brought up a few of your interviews before.
I brought that one specifically up for the TSM 100 Thieves match.
I was watching Migos' co-stream.
They certainly already do a lot of taking content as well, with in between games showing the TSM videos, or like sometimes other ones. Obviously, I'm not remembering, but the most recent one I remember is the Huni one the other day.
There's like the Golden Guardians newbie one. We yoinked earlier
Niles
as
one
well.
before that.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a Niles one as well that came up?
Yep.
Yeah.
The newbie video was so perfectly timed, because I don't know if people saw, one of the TSM executives had said like Golden Guardians does nothing for fans, and tries to make no fans or whatever. And then the very next day that video happened, and one of the top comments was like, "And I took that personally." I really thought it was funny. Regardless, like I don't know. I appreciate you guys bringing that up, because I really like I one, shout out to Gyoto, because obviously I think about this stuff a lot, but he sort of put it back front and center in my mind again when he was talking about stuff last week.
Travis only has one spot in his mind for something. It was full of import rules.
Yes,
discussion.
exactly.
Yeah, so
Yes.
he had to like kick it out to
Yes.
get the brain space.
Yeah.
So,
Either way.
Travis, is your job harder now that you can't just camp outside the front doors of the LCS stadium waiting for players to come out? Or does that contribute a little bit to maybe why, I don't know, not as many people are on air? Or do you think there's been a drop in the amount of people that have been able to be featured because you have to reach out and it's a lot harder to make scheduling happen?
Well, so a lot of people might not know this, but you've always had to submit requests. So when you see me outside doing interviews with players, it is not a situation where like I'm grabbing them on their way out. I kind of wish it was, because
he's just reaching out. He's lying. He's just reaching out and like plucking them.
Okay, so
as they're
I really
trying
wish
to
it
escape.
did work that way, though. I think it's humorous.
It'd be hilarious if that were true, but no, it's not.
Unironically, though, that is some of the best content, I feel like, is the like in-person nature of like Doublelift in Travis interviews, but then like Sneaky would walk out, or
Yes.
like, people would just kind of like float in and out, and none of that there's just no interaction, which just sucks right now. That's probably one of the things I miss the most, is like the kind of natural, I mean, the created pieces by the teams is great, but seeing like two players banter that you can just see is like, it's just not there. I miss it.
Yeah, it was so hard to do, like, and this is a failing of me as a writer first and foremost, but it was really difficult for me to, with the type of narrative features that I really like doing, which are these long narrative features that typically no one tends to read, but involves like interviewing a player and then several other people around them or people they know, etc., and doing like a really lengthy narrative piece. And that's really difficult to do if you don't see someone in person, because a lot of it you're taking from how they interact with you, how they interact with other people, what they're like on stage, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I
I was going to say, to answer your question, I do miss that stuff a lot. There is some element of like, I don't know, I think I've been able to do longer interviews in some cases, just over webcam, in a way that I did not anticipate being able to. And I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it's because it like, maybe normally it feels like a player really wants to like head out or something, and I don't have that sense of urgency in other situations, but it does feel like I can kind of do longer interviews over the webcam. So I kind of enjoyed that, and I'm curious to see if the interviews kind of naturally get shorter again later on. But I don't know. It's funny because you're making me very nostalgic for back in the day when I used to be able to do interviews at the studio, because Riot has these like interview rooms upstairs. And I always rejected using those and just always wanted to do them anywhere else, just because it's so much more dynamic. And I thought it was really fun when you could see like fans walking around in the background. I really like the idea that it gave fans the idea, like this experience of basically being there. Like as a fan, you could kind of get the atmosphere and the vibes or whatever.
You could hover awkwardly out in the corner and watch.
Yes. Regardless, even when it's like not even like a pro player comes in and like suddenly takes over the interview or interacts with somebody, it's like sometimes you would just see a team like the losing team. I'd be interviewing the winner, and then like the
And
losing team would just walk by,
yeah.
dejected in the background, and I'd be asking them about beating them. I'd be like, okay, let's keep our voices down because they're walking by, and we're good. You know, I miss that stuff a lot. Anyway, sorry, Josh, you were gonna ask something.
I was just going to point out basically what you just said, and with Mark saying how other players like Sneaky would come in. I think so far during the pandemic, some of the best interviews have spawned as a result of that spontaneity that you guys mentioned. Like the Odoamne one, I don't know if you guys saw that one where he was crowned like MVP of the game, and like he didn't know it was going to happen, and the broadcast didn't know it was going to happen. And in the background, his team comes in, and other people are messing with him and pouring like confetti or whatever.
Yeah, I have
think,
not seen that. That sounds good though.
yeah, I think that's something that we definitely missed. And obviously, a lot of the talent from back then has been moved through with Sneaky. But yeah, I guess thanks for all these answers. These have been great.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for the call. Is there anything you want to shout out before we go on to the next caller?
Game Fuel again. I got in the mail my the victory caller stuff. It's sitting at home. I need to go drive and grab it, but I did really appreciate that, and I'm super excited to get some caffeine back in my system.
Nice. Well, congratulations, Josh. Happy to hear that it already got delivered. That's pretty quick turnaround. And we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break really quickly to talk about our other sponsor this evening, Alienware. We love Alienware so much. Honestly, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, they've sponsored me for so long. I'm running out of things to praise them for because I feel like so many of you now know this. But once again, I had multiple people tweet this week talking about how they got an Alienware computer or an Alienware monitor. That stuff is always awesome to see. Really appreciate it. Go check out their stuff at alienware.com/Travis. Use Travis10 off to save 10%. And check out their stuff. They've got the new Alienware Aurora that you can go see. They've got these amazing high refresh rate monitors. People always praise Alienware for their monitors in particular. So if you're in the market for a monitor, make sure that you check them out. And yeah, I mean, it's just so fantastic to see what they're doing. I have, by the way, I realize this isn't for most people, but I still, it's been about a year now since I've had it, maybe a little bit longer, and I still absolutely love this 55-inch OLED gaming monitor that I have up to my left. You can go check it out over at alienware.com/Travis and use code Travis10 off. We thank Alienware so much for the support of the show. Anyway, you want to grab the next
caller?
Yeah. Sylvan says, reminder that Travis's discount code stacks with site-wide discounts. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And quite frankly, I don't always know what situations it does and doesn't. So, yeah, go check it out because sometimes they do these big discounts across the website. And by the way, if you ever find a code or anything that's better than mine, be sure to use it. Like right now, they've got 17% off on a bunch of stuff for their semi-annual sale. And their code is save17. So I want you to save money, but if you it's still helpful if you use alienware.com/Travis to enter the website, because at least that will also give me some credit, even if you use a different discount code. Spires is here. Spires, where are you calling from?
Hey there, I'm calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Chattanooga, Tennessee. What do you want to talk about on the show?
On the show today, I want to talk about that 100 Thieves should and they need to sub Damonte back in if they want to have any chance in contending in the spring playoffs. And I just I want to preface this. I don't necessarily think like a 6-man roster is necessarily bad for 100 Thieves. But I think like right now in the position they're in, I don't think that having Ryoma back in is necessarily like the right call if they want to contend in the playoffs. I think watching last week, both games 1 and 2, because basically what everyone kind of has like the idea of is Ryoma is kind of like a better control mage player than Damonte is, right? And we've seen both of these players play, Orianna, Azir. But I think we've seen that 100 Thieves really doesn't play very well into that control mage style. And if we, looking back at the beginning of the split and in the tournament, the lock-in tournament, we've seen that 100 Thieves really, like the soul of 100 Thieves and their identity is like proactivity, right? And we see, at least at the beginning of the split, a lot of like bot turret dives, and not all the time do they necessarily go well, or like they actually got something out. And sometimes they did kind of lose in gold or lose in fights from these dives in bot lane. But I don't necessarily think that anyone was really like I think they got a lot of applause for at least trying this proactivity. So I think we've seen from at least in game one, Ryoma did have like a 2-0 start, but I think that really came down to Jizuke like overextending and just kind of the team collapsing around them. But past that, I think both in the Orianna game and the Azir game, he really didn't necessarily show anything to make anyone think that like he's necessarily a better option over like Damonte in the mid lane for the team as a whole. I think we kind of, I think we can all kind of agree that 100 Thieves, like it's not a mid lane problem of why they're kind of maybe like blundering as a team. Right? I think it's more of like a team problem, obviously, right? I don't think subbing out their mid laner has really solved anything. And I think this is one of their like worser weeks this split. And I'd also like to point out like Damonte really like isn't like they've been winning with Damonte, right? The last game that they had with Damonte obviously wasn't great. The Azir game against Perks where he got solo killed, but by the end of that week, that week was still a 2-1 week, even after losing to Cloud9. But looking forward into like the spring split or the spring playoffs, I mean, I think they really need to try to return to that proactivity. I think they've kind of slowed down that proactivity and they're playing a little slower.
I think we got the gist of it. I just want to make sure that we get into the answer now, Spires.
I was gonna say I have a ton of opinions on this.
I mean, really quickly, Mark, since we're on the 100T topic, assuming we didn't pull another caller for it, I just wanted to ask you, how vindicated are you feeling about your Clozer ranking that you got a ton of shit for previously after this past weekend?
Honestly, like not a ton, because my Clozer ranking was about the first 9 games, and like whether you can agree with me or not, these games don't prove anything about that. So I wouldn't say like I'm celebrating there when he ults Mundo and they don't kill him, or like when he Lilia sleeps and then recalls. Like it doesn't have any bearing on what I said. So I don't know.
But anyway, so into the actual call, which is, and I should say, by the way, too, Twitch chat was so torn on this. They all had immediate reactions, and half of them were like, hang up, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. The other half were like, yes, this is exactly what needs to be done.
I want to hear Emily's take, because I feel like I end up talking, because I had that power rank, I feel like I've talked about 100 Thieves so much that like I want to hear other people talk about it.
So I have a lot of opinions on this. The first one, though, that I'm going to start with is something I actually brought up on broadcast, and it's that I talked about this not on desk, and then I brought it somewhat onto desk on yesterday. Wow, I have no concept of time. And it's that when you have a team that you feel like has a really definitive play style, which I think 100 Thieves had a really specific way that they wanted to play. Initially, that was around a lot of those early dives, whether they were successful or not. That was around trying to go to side lanes while Clozer farmed. And if you have that and you feel like you are very good for that, and a meta shift happens, I feel like most NA teams are going to go with option A, which is stick to whatever the champion pool is that you think is going to be with mid laner. So if it's Azir, Orianna, Syndra, whatever, you have your mid laner play those, regardless of how it fits into like your current style. Or you can do what a lot of LPL and LCK teams do, and you just double down on your style. But instead of looking at what everyone else is playing or expected to play, you go and you're like, okay, so if we can't play TF, Galio, and Rise, let's look at mid lane Rumble, mid lane Kled. I'm just looking at Doinby's match history honestly right now.
Yeah.
But
mid lane Renekton.
Yeah, exactly. Mid lane Nocturne. And like you guys probably think I'm joking, but I'm not actually. Like I feel like there's a lot of value if you really want to double down on your own play style in saying, okay, we're in a new meta now. We have these champions in mid lane. what can our mid laner do that still suits our playstyle, that still suits what he wants to play, that will allow us to continue to do some of these early aggressive dives to unlock Huhi so he can either come up and reset the mid wave or make a play mid, etc. Right? I feel like a lot of North American teams don't do this. I feel like generally a lot of teams are more going to look at whatever the meta picks are and go to that, and I don't think that's wrong. Regarding having a rotating roster, I actually think it's quite difficult. I think it's more difficult than people give it credit for, not because there isn't value in having a player play a bunch of specific champions really good and have it or well, and have another player who plays a different batch of champions really well, and then swapping them in and out. But it requires a lot of finesse to do that. And I think even the best team that I can think of that was able to do it was probably 2018 RNG, and we all know how they kind of ended up at Worlds, which, you know, I don't think it's necessarily related to the rotating roster, but like I do think you do tend to end up with a specific set of people that are going to end up playing more than another, and then you have to balance the fact that everyone wants to play, and I don't think it's wrong that everyone wants to play, right? So I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I'm not on 100 Thieves' coaching staff, so I don't know what is going on internally. I appreciate them like sticking by their decision to put Ryoma in, because I feel like that would be really unfair to him. If they weren't so clear about like, hey, at the beginning of the season, we said this could be an open spot, and now we're starting him because he's done really well. And I also don't think the losses can be placed on his shoulders either. I do think if you look at their Game 3 draft, it was a lot more well-suited to what they did better in the beginning of the split, right? And they were obviously, in my opinion, looked a lot more comfortable with it. So I don't think that's a coincidence either.
I think one thing I see a lot of people talking about too with like the whole, oh, your play style should be this kind of way, that I will defend coaching staffs a little bit about, because I feel like a lot of times people just default to blaming the coaching staff, and this is an instance where we don't know what they were doing in scrims in the weeks leading up to the benching. So like, it didn't make its way to stage, but there's 100% a possibility that they said, okay, well, let's try the Rumble mid and the Kled and the Renekton. And like, who knows, maybe Damonte turbo into it. And it's like, okay, we can't do that. Yeah, so like that is one of the difficulties that comes with analyzing a team, because I absolutely agree with Emily that I would have rather have seen them keep trying these picks that we didn't see on stage, so we don't think they really gave it a go. It felt like Damonte just started playing control mages, and then they swapped him out and went for someone else who's probably a little bit better of a control mage player, but like didn't address the rest of the things that were going wrong with their team. I felt like their drafts this weekend did try to address some of that. They moved Clozer off Olaf. I mean, part of his bans, Olaf is kind of risen into permaban priority, but he's at least playing Skarner. He played a Hecarim game. He played a Lilia game, which is like higher playmaking generally than Olaf and Talia. It's like overall, I like the ideas of what the team's trying to do, but it definitely feels like they're trying to find a new identity in the middle of the split that is not at all aligned with what you were talking about them doing at the start. And like, I think in a way I could almost see it working, if I'm being honest. Like, okay, Someday has played a lot of tanks in weak side over his career. He's actually quite good at it. And FBI is a monster team fighter. So and they're great at lane. So like, what if this team just slowed down, went the other direction, said fuck it, like they put Ryoma in, they play controlling early games and scaling, like, could that work? Maybe. I don't know. It just feels weird to do it in the middle of the split, I think is where I land on it, especially without seeing them, at least not having any evidence of them going into that, doubling down into their play style that would have set them apart in NA. Because TSM has shown like, hey, we can do the scaling game plan, baby. Give PoE Azir Victor. We're gonna win a lot of games. And like, I'm not convinced that 100 Thieves can do that better than TSM can.
Yeah. That's interesting. What do you think of this take, caller? Or what do you think of these answers, caller?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Mark. I think yeah, they could kind of go in with like the slow down, but I don't think 100 Thieves can match like a Team Liquid that plays that same kind of play style, or like a TSM or Cloud9. So like, I think it's definitely possible, and maybe they can knock out like an Evil Geniuses, or maybe they can knock out like a Dignitas playing that way. But if they want to contend with like these top tier teams, I don't see trying to like match them at what they're doing working.
Very good. Hey, Spires, anything you want to say before we move on to the next caller?
Yeah, I just want to say shout out to Alienware, and yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right, off to the next caller. Some more shout outs to some subs. Absolute Darkness, Burt Lips, Yeshua 705. I don't know if I got these. Yuma Street, Juicy Jollins, The Noblet, Jobadiah gifted a sub. Okay, and then Spencer 1292, Danny Grimm with the 18 months, The White Knight for Hire, PD Null, Zeps 9565. Thanks everyone for subscribing. That's always nice of you. All right, looks like our next caller is here. SummonerSix is here. SummonerSix, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bellevue, Washington.
Bellevue, Washington. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take tonight is that Huni is actually underrated as a top laner, and it was kind of largely glossed over that the counterparts who TSM could have picked up in Licorice and Impact aren't performing as well as Huni has been so far.
Huni is... So, sorry, you're saying...
When Huni was signed, a lot of people were critical of the Huni signing, and they said like, why not get Licorice? Why not get Hanser? Why not get Impact? And now that we're actually in the split, Huni is comparing.
Where are the Huni haters now?
Yeah.
Why so silent, Huni critics? Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. I mean there were so many people that were like, why didn't TSM get this player? Why didn't TSM get this player? And Jack had no problem at the time reminding everyone that they could have had Licorice, which I thought was very funny. Interesting. Okay, so Emily, let's go with you first. You know, is it true that Huni has worked out completely fine and that better pickup than Licorice or Hanser?
So the thing I think with Huni that I kind of addressed earlier, right, when I was talking about TSM and Sword Art, is that he is the type of player who is always going to look better on a team that has strengthened their communication. So if a team is not communicating well, I don't think Huni is going to look particularly well because he'll end up overextending in lane. He'll end up trying to force plays, like force TP's bot side to try to help his bot lane when he might not need to. These are all things that we've seen happen to him, like not just anytime recently, but throughout his entire career. And I actually think like Huni has remained a very similar, like I know how people are like, oh, Huni is a coin flip player and, you know, a lot of things where you either get good Huni or bad Huni, but I actually think they're the same Huni. And a lot of it just depends on A, what the top lane champ pool is at the time that's currently in meta, B, how well he's communicating with his team. Because someone like Huni, who's just really, really willing to like overextend like a boss, and then also in that try to go either like he used to go mid a lot more than I think he does now, but or try to TP bot side to get bot side advantages. Like he used to be really, I actually think this is something he's improved on. He used to be really, really itchy with teleport finger. Now I think he's actually a little bit more patient and calm about it. But a lot of that stuff, like I think some of his laning things are never going to go away, but a lot of that stuff is also team dependent, right? So like, is your team telling you where the enemy jungler is, or are you constantly communicating that? Are you constantly communicating the state of mid wave or where your own jungler is, that kind of thing? And I think Huni is always going to look better on a team that is communicating better. And lo and behold, all TSM players have been talking about is how much their communication has improved. And even in their most recent game, you know, they cited as like, well, we just kind of kept our cool and ended up winning. So I think you really see Huni's strengths right now in his willingness to help the team and also in his team fighting. And I think that's always where like Huni is going to shine.
I think it's an interesting topic because I feel like EG have had a lot of struggles, a lot of them not really related to Impact's level of play. Mm-hmm. And FlyQuest has been disappointing. And I think I'm a little disappointed in Licorice to split. Like I didn't think that he was going to dominate just with the level of play that FlyQuest was probably going to put out there. But even then, I'm a little disappointed that he's some of the mistakes he's made, like even this is just the most recent one because it just happened, but like that red buff Gragas attempt where he tried to kill whichever guy that was, and he just like whiffed the body slam, whiffed the ult, and then kind of. I mean, I think the guy flashed his body slam, but still, like it was just like a play that gets him killed, and I don't know who's telling him to go for that or what. It's like I would say Licorice has been relatively disappointing. Impact has been, I think, pretty good overall. Though EG has been a bit of a problem.
Well, it feels like he's playing better in a lot of ways than he did when he was on TL.
I think he's getting more done in a lot of ways. I feel like he's a little unlocked to try and play more aggressive with a team that's just down to. But one thing I'll say for the Huni point that will never be true with Impact is the Jace games. Even though they didn't win all of them, like that would just never, you would never go Syndra Jace with Impact, really. I mean, I think he played Jace like once a year about just to be like, hey, look, I can do it, guys. But like, it's not like legitimately a thing. So I do think that's a wrinkle that TSM has not even really like reached or had to really delve into yet. I mean, it's still early on in the year, all things considered. When you look at the grand scope of summer into playoff run into Worlds, that like there's a lot of growth still available for TSM in playstyle and stuff like that. So I could see a world where like Impact's playing really well, but he's playing what we know Impact plays, and Huni's like, yeah, I can play Shen like Impact, and I can play Camille, Jace, whatever else ends up maybe being a strong top laner in the future. I think that's an extra wrinkle to 100 that Huni will bring to TSM.
I mean, I think it's been really interesting to see. Somebody in the chat was like, well, the Huni haters were the hosts of this show. I think what I said at the time was Huni, in a lot of ways, I felt like this Huni thing was a much needed second chance for him, right? Like if he had gone to TSM and then just busted out, I think everyone would say, okay, well, he's clearly not the top performing top laner or as good of a top laner as he was a long time ago, and like his best days are behind him. And so I'm happy because I enjoy Huni a lot as a personality. I am happy that he is doing so well. What's so funny, Mark?
Someone in Twitch chat was like, must have needed the second chance in quotes, and like, guess I'm looking up some VODs tonight. And I was about to say, I have no fucking clue what I said about Huni at the start of the year, man. Like, look, you tell me what I said. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to see what I said. Honestly, like, you and I talk so much about League across so many things. You especially with the broadcast, that it's like people will be like, don't you remember in 2018 whenever you said that like a player like, you know, Huni would never be good again? I don't know. And then we never know.
And besides, if I'm wrong, I don't really care. You know, like I'm wrong about a lot of things. I just don't remember what I said.
Yeah. Make sure, Vasilim, whenever you find the VOD of me saying Huni sucks, that you stick it next to my prediction that CLG would beat Team Liquid that I tweeted. All right? Sometimes I'm right. SummonerSix, what do you think of all this? We do a good job of agreeing with you, explaining why he's doing well?
I mean, I actually prefer it when people disagree with me, but that's okay.
Well, Huni sucks.
That's okay. But no, that all makes sense. I was just looking at stats on GOL.gg, and I was recognizing that Huni's like top 3 in almost every relevant stat, most of the time even ahead of Impact. And I think what Emily said is largely correct. Like, he looks good on a good team, but he also is enabling the rest of the team to also play better, because I think that was like the starkest difference between Lock-In and how they're performing now. Because I don't really think Power of Evil's been doing significantly better, and I think Lost is a little bit more enabled because Sword Art's actually able to communicate and practice with the team. So I just felt like the biggest difference was Huni's now actually performing a lot better.
I mean, isn't Sword Art also online?
Yes, he is.
I've
been
online. Seeing this a lot recently, which I believe is an anime reference.
You would be correct.
It is.
Thanks so much, SummonerSix, for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, I just want to shout out my friend Vincent and my girlfriend Lily, because they're both probably listening. And also shout out to Game Fuel. Thanks, Travis.
Very good. Thank you so much for the call.
And Emily.
And Mark?
And
You're
Emily.
lucky you remember. You wouldn't be back on if you didn't.
Oh, true.
Right.
I can't ruin my chances.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right, on to the next caller. Thank you to Jay Schroed, Nishka, Bankshot, GX Karth, and Aligabus. Aligabus? I don't know. Sometimes people have the most wild names. Bradmeister is here. Brad, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from West Pittston, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. I feel like we're getting a lot of East Coasters tonight. Anyway, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Because we're earlier, man.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
So I want to ask what you guys think is going to happen to Broxah once his contract ends with CLG later this year. Looking at his team history, so he went from Fnatic to Liquid to CLG. He had success with Fnatic and with Liquid, not so much with CLG. And CLG, despite winning some nice games over the weekend, have looked pretty much absolutely abysmal the entire split, to the point where Twitch chat are now ironically POG championing their upcoming games. His situation as a pro player has gotten pretty much worse and worse over the last couple of years. So when his contract ends in November, do you think he'll get picked up by another LCS team, or is this just the end of Broxah?
I mean, I think it's a little early to say that, like, he's doomed with CLG, right? Like, if CLG starts doing really well, even if he's not, like, the most obvious contributor to that, I feel like they might... I mean, if CLG starts winning games, I feel like they should just keep that. They should just not mess with it at all and just take it. I don't know, Mark?
I was going to say, this is not the direction I thought this call was going to go when I saw it in the, when I pulled it. It was... I forget exactly what the caller wrote, but it was, like, oh, I want to talk about and ask about Broxah's situation at the end of the year. I thought it was going to be a relatively positive spin. I didn't realize that we were going to be so negative. Like, this is the magic of Hotline League. I have no idea. It's kind of like, It's like reaching your hand to a bag and, like, you kind of know what's in there, and then you get this, and you're like, oh. Because I think Broxah has actually been okay. I don't want to overstate anything. He joined the middle of the split. There were some rough games. He hasn't looked incredible. But he has not played that many games with the team yet. And his latest ones were actually not bad at all. His latest Lilia game, he played pretty well. I remember quite a few nice, like, flash Q, alt Zonia engages, which is standard, I would say, for Lilia. But he did the number that really worked out well and set the team up well. So, like, I think CLG was obviously a dumpster fire until Pobelter came back. They were, like, 1-8. Until they got to their starting intended roster. Their starting intended roster is 3-3 now. When Pobelter came back. So, like, I could see a world where, like, yeah, CLG doesn't go to Worlds and everyone still kind of memes this team, but, like, I don't think Broxah looks terrible. I would be super surprised if Broxah keeps playing at the level he showed this weekend and was just, like, dead at the end of the year.
Across the past...
Also...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, looking at Team Liquid so, like, we're just looking at spring right now for CLG, right? And so in order to make that a fair comparison, you have to only compare it to how well Team Liquid did last year under really similar circumstances, right? With him not being able to join because of visa issues, stuff like that. And TL were 7 and 11 in the spring standings, and they ended up in 9th place. And he joined mid-season. So I just want to put that context in here because I think, yes, he had success with Team Liquid once he was able to practice with the team. But, like, even as late as this past week, they said that this past week was their first really good, strong week of practice with the entire team as a unit, the starting 5 that they want. And so I feel like that can't be understated as well because they have just had more time together. So obviously he's going to look better, or hopefully you hope he's going to look better the more time they play together. And I would agree with that he has. I also agree with Mark's assessment of what he's looked like thus far. Like, I don't think he's been bad. I don't think he's lit the world on fire either, but it's also like a really awkward situation, and this is the second spring he's gone through with that. Yeah. So he's just really unlucky.
Someone in Twitch chat said, like, the one thing we can be sure of next year is that he'll be in visa problems.
Yeah. I hope not. I would know. Yeah, but yeah, it's really unlucky because he's been flagged twice apparently for visa something. I don't know. I never know how that works. But
I don't know if anybody knows how it works.
I think if you're going to say like, oh, he hasn't had success with CLG, regardless of what you think CLG is, you have to take into consideration his quote unquote success with Team Liquid in spring, which was not much.
I do think at the end of Broxah's career, there's a good chance he becomes a coach, though. I could definitely see that. I think he's even said before that he could see himself being a coach. So I don't know if he'd be a head coach or whatever, but I could definitely see him becoming a coach for a team. Bradmeister, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with comparing his situation with CLG to how long he had with Liquid. I wouldn't be surprised if Liquid do end up making playoffs next split, considering that this split is pretty much over for them. Maybe I was a little too critical on him. Give him a little bit more time. We'll see. I've already got it in my head that CLG aren't going to have a lot of success next split. I like Broxah. I do. It's hard to tell. It really is.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. So I hope that he ends up sticking around. And I do think now that they've got their full roster that it'll be okay. I don't know. We'll see. Brad, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout
out? No, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good one. Off. Mark goes to get the next caller.
Oh, yeah. Off I go.
That's what I just said. I am Nikluos. Thank you for the 36 months, 3 years.
Oh, wow.
That's so awesome. Really glad to see people hard committing to this channel. Bluejay is here. Bluejay, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Sarnia, Ontario.
Good to have you back on the show. What do you want? Oh, by the way, do you have to move your podcast now that we changed our schedule? Because I remember you did it like right before ours.
Dude, we don't know what to do, man. We don't know whether we if we should move ours forward, if we should try to make it after Hotline. You're putting us in a tough spot here, Mark.
Yeah,
I don't even think about anything when I make decisions.
I don't
consider my actions at all.
Good place to be in.
Don't worry about my carbon footprint. Nothing. No thought.
We panicked to start like half an hour earlier tonight so that we could make Hotline League and we could watch the show.
Well,
my bad.
Apologies. I should have given an earlier heads up too. Regardless,
we get it done in time. It's all good.
What's your take on the show tonight?
For those that don't know, last week there was some news about Schalke maybe selling their LEC slot because of their soccer/football team not doing so well.
Yeah.
And so the take is that it hurts to see LCS and LEC organizations suffer from being second or third priority to their parent companies, like Schalke and like Golden Guardians, who sold their whole roster at 100T. And so my question for everyone was, I wanted to know if you guys thought that, is this going to be the future of esports? Are we going to continue to see stuff like this? Where orgs have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to get budget for their LCS and LEC squads, and maybe I guess is the onus on Riot to be more careful about who they accept into franchising? Those are I got a lot of questions that I don't really know how to feel about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think it's important to say that there's no evidence that these NBA franchises or traditional sports franchises were. It mostly seems like this is a result of COVID, where a professional sports team that makes the vast majority of their money through holding games and selling tickets and hot dogs and all that stuff, it's hard to imagine a situation that's designed better to just wreck these businesses and cause havoc on them. So
yeah,
I tend to be less worried about that long term. I mean, I think my concerns are more around I don't think LEC or LCS is particularly a great moneymaker. I think a lot of them were sold. I mean, everybody, not just traditional sports team owners, but also investors and all that stuff. I think they were sold on this dream that LEC and LCS were going to become these massive cash cows and the future of everything is esports and League of Legends and all that stuff. And while LEC has seen viewership uptick, LCS has seen viewership downtick. maybe you could maybe argue it's stabilized. I know it's kind of weird when you're looking at viewing hours across like 3 days instead of 2, but I don't know. I am less. My concerns are more broad, I guess, than just specifically the. And I'm distracted by Mark's situation.
Gotta keep the viewers entertained whenever we start talking big
My
stuff.
concerns are more broad than just the sports side.
Interesting. You did answer my last question that I was going to ask, which is like, should the orgs did the orgs anticipate higher revenues? So yeah, I think that's another part
I
of it.
personally think that they probably did. It's hard to imagine that the orgs were told like, 3 years into franchising, there won't be a media rights deal, and viewership will look kind of. I mean, they have more sponsors now, but like, I'd be really surprised if any of these orgs were like actually really happy with the state of things or their investors. Any of that stuff.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not all of the orgs, right? Like, there's no issue for TSM getting the money they need to sign a player, or for Cloud9 or Team Liquid, right? So it's like, it's not like that with every org, but it does suck to see like, our soccer team sucks right now, so we're selling our spot. And it's like, well, that just feels really bad. And I know, like, obviously I'm from Toronto. I know, like, for those that don't know, like, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they own the Toronto Raptors. And if the Raptors ever need budget to go spend for a big player, they can do it no problem. But, like, it feels like these basketball orgs or soccer orgs that own these LCS or LEC teams don't exactly feel the same way, you know?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. So, one, I don't know if TSM is still, like, people in chat are saying TSM is profitable. I don't know if they still are, given, like, the dramatic increase in their spending that they had this past year. I had another thing that I was going to say, and my brain is now freezing or locking up. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's really difficult. I know what I was going to say. The other thing is, like, you mentioned, like, it's not an issue for all the orgs, like TSM is in an okay place. Andy, in that big post he made around the franchising stuff, was the one who basically implied viewership needs to go up or we can't keep spending at this level. Whenever he talked about how viewership has gone down and how teams are investing based off the idea that this is going to be like a really big league and all that stuff. So, if you read between the lines on some of the stuff, I do think there are concerns about the health of this thing longer term.
My 2 useless cents. Was Optic a NBA backed org? I know they had someone back, like Infinity was backing Optic, but I don't remember what
Infinity was like this. Yeah, there was Optic was funded by it was kind of like EchoFox, one of these like, we're going to invest $1 bajillion into esports, and we're going to create a media arm and like an agency and a merchandise thing, and it was like kind of like a bad version of the 100T model. So Optic was very clearly
people saying it was baseball, Texas Rangers. Well, I was going to say that like a couple of the orgs feel like they already kind of had that moment of like, wait, this isn't what we thought we signed up for. Like Clutch just was like, all right.
Yeah, Clutch was like, we're so excited to be creating a union with the Dignitas and the 76ers. It's like, okay.
I mean, Clutch was like with like Daryl Morey was there. I was like, holy shit, Daryl Morey's at Scouting Grounds? And I think very quickly they were like, what the fuck am I doing with my time? So like,
I mean, I think Daryl Morey still believes in esports and still found it really interesting. Notable that, again, the Rockets left, and then Daryl Morey isn't even at the Rockets anymore. Although now I think he's at the 76ers, isn't he?
I actually have no idea. But as a whole, it was just really funny to see that Clutch kind of got out of there.
He is there, so that's funny. He ended up in the same. He cares about this shit so much that he
did
signed,
it all for League of
followed.
Legends.
Yeah.
All right, you know what,
His
Daryl
LCS
Morey?
team.
I'm sorry I slandered you there. That's some bullshit
He
on my
left
end.
the Rockets.
He's so committed to League that when Rockets didn't want to back Clutch Gaming, he said, fuck you guys, and he sold it to the new team that he was going to.
Yeah.
I don't know
That
if
is
any of this,
commitment.
I don't think any of that's what I just said was right, but whatever. Anyway, so to Bluejay's point, it is a little weird, or not weird, but just like you want to see the orgs be 100% like about themselves, and not like you're saying playing second fiddle to some other ecosystem kind of thing. But at the same time, I don't think that's just realistically how the league scene is anymore. Like axiomatic, TSM's got, I forget who the fuck invested in them. Everyone's got investors now. It's just different.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't blame these organizations. It just feels bad, and I don't know if that's something that we should expect in the future or not. And on another note, I was wondering, Emily, if you knew that this is something that happens in the LPL or not.
I mean, the LPL is something that it's a league that you really can't compare to other leagues because their franchising has been, from what I know, quite successful. But the problem is that you just can't compare the fan bases, because over in LPL, when League of Legends started, Tencent is basically distributing League of Legends through your QQ account. So you don't need to like basically, in order to play League of Legends, Kelsey has talked about this on her stream too, by the way. In order to play League of Legends, you don't like need to get your parents' permission like you do a lot of games, because you need to like type in your like country number or whatever. You can just play it, and it was advertised like that. So like it came at a time where streaming was really booming in China, and then you have this game that's free to play that you can easily play with your friends, and you can like pretend like you're doing homework basically and just play League of Legends, you know. And so like it really exploded in popularity, which is why they have so many servers. And so like you just, with a player base, the population size of China, like you cannot compare it to anything else. There's just so much, like even if it's the same percentage of people, percentage of the raw population playing League, which like even if it's exactly the same percentage, the number is just going to be, the raw number of people that you're marketing to is just going to be like so much larger.
Yeah.
And so you also have to know that there have been some rumblings of teams changing hands, and that has happened since franchising started. They've either rebranded or they've changed ownership and stuff like that, but there does not seem to be a lack of people willing to get into the LPL. And additionally, despite the fact that from what I know, the LPL is quite profitable, there's also the fact that some of these companies aren't really expecting a huge ROI. Like, Invictus Gaming is Wang Qicheng's like pet project, like if you have that much money, like he just has a team, because why not? He likes streaming League of Legends, he likes playing, he even played one split. Jackula played his support against Vici Gaming, and they still won, and that was the year they ended up winning Worlds. So like when you have a couple of owners like that who just like, I'm not saying ROI doesn't matter to them, but it's a lot less of a thing where your investors are suddenly knocking on your door being like, well, it's been a few years, like how's that esports thing going? It's a lot less pressure too, right? So I'm not saying that orgs don't pull out of the LPL, but that there just doesn't seem to be the same kind of, I don't know, panic isn't the right word, because I don't think
Pressure?
it's panic, but like there's not as much pressure to make your money back with certain organizations. And then with others, there have been things that have changed, but they haven't seemed to have an issue finding someone else to step in. So I think the LPL is good to compare to for a lot of reasons, but I think in this case you can't draw a one-to-one comparison with NALCS because the player base and the fan base is just so different.
Interesting.
Yeah. Bluejay, I don't know if you have any other follow-up questions, but
No, I've been on for quite a while, and there's 3 other callers, I think, so we could wrap up.
okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for the call. I do think it's an interesting topic, and I do imagine we're going to be talking more about viewership and investors and all that stuff over the next
All the stuff Travis loves.
Well,
Yeah, I knew
do.
Travis would like this kind of take. You usually like the off-the-rift kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's Mark and I, that's our dynamic duo for the show, right? Is I tend to talk about the stuff outside of the game because I'm an idiot when it comes to the stuff inside a game. and Mark, he's an idiot about everything that isn't League of Legends inside the game. So
Nice.
Bluejay, any shout-outs, plugs?
Just shout out to Game Fuel. I'll crack a certain Mountain Dew product right now. And
Nice.
congrats on that. We don't need to specify the Mountain Dew product at all. And yeah, we can go next.
Oh yeah, that's right, because they don't have it in Canada and you're Canadian. Well, I
I
appreciate
got the
that you're
Mountain
drinking
Dew, the different one.
I appreciate that you're drinking a Mountain Dew product that's available in your country, even if Game Fuel is not. Thank you so
A
much.
real
Bluejay.
fan
for
would
having me
find a
on the
way
sh-
to import it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like $150 for shipping. Nah, I'll pass.
Yeah, Amazon has some weird option where you can. I think they have some service that'll pay you a ton to do it. Either way, thank you so much, Bluejay.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, guys. Goodbye.
See it.
Well, that's a good jumping off point for our Game Fuel break. Shout out to Game Fuel. We love Game Fuel so much. So one thing that's interesting that I found out this past week is that, and I saw it on their Twitter actually, when they tweeted this weekend, Mountain Dew Game Fuel currently sold out on GameFuel.com. I like to think it's all you. They sponsor other people like Courage. I like to pretend that it's not any of those folks that are selling out their website. That's actually you all. So right now I'll do exclamation mark Game Fuel in the Twitch chat. You'll see there a Amazon link. So obviously I prefer if people buy it off GameFuel.com. I think it's actually sometimes better for all of you too, because especially while they have this free shipping promo going, you can get their battle pass, which is the victory pass going, and that's kind of a cool way to keep leveling up your account on the Game Fuel website. But while they are sold out, Mark currently unboxing Game Fuel Zero. While they are sold out, you can definitely use that Amazon link. And if you use that Amazon link, which is also in the YouTube description, if you're watching this as a VOD on YouTube, it's a referral link that I'm able to track. So I can then report those numbers to Game Fuel. So look, if you want to wait, feel free to wait. But if you need Game Fuel now, because I know some of you have really gotten in on it, be sure to use that Amazon link because it does help me. Again, exclamation mark Game Fuel in the chat. And thank you so much, Game Fuel, for sponsoring the show. Really appreciate it. And
did you see that giant box of Game Fuel I still have?
I did.
I trolled you so hard, dude. I was like, I'm running out of Game Fuel because I thought all the Game Fuel in my fridge was all I had. Turns out I had 2 more boxes in my closet.
Wait, how did you not know that you had? Because I gave you so many boxes.
Out of sight, out of mind, dude. I was like, I got through at least a box.
I was
think
gonna
he
be
gave me
shocked.
4.
When you were like, I'm out of it, I was like, how much is he drinking? Like, clearly Mark really enjoys Game Fuel because I gave him so many cases of this stuff. I thought maybe Ashley had started drinking it or something.
I'm like a baby. I don't have object permanence, you know. Like, all the ones in the fridge are gone. I must be out of Game Fuel.
What was I gonna say? Oh, did the new box show up? Because I know they sent you another shipment.
No, so the other ones hadn't showed up yet. So I was like, oh, I was gonna grab a Game Fuel for this segment, and then I forgot. I was like, oh shit, I'm out of Game Fuel. And then Ashley was like, no, you're not. They're like boxes up there.
Okay.
I was like, oh shit.
Thank God for Ashley.
Yeah.
Anyway, shout out to Game Fuel. Thanks so much. Somebody in Twitch chat says, I was gold 2 before Game Fuel. Now I'm diamond 1. Drink Game Fuel.
Nice.
All right, Mark is grabbing the next caller. I am Nikluos. Thank you for the 36 months. 3 years. Jordan, I think I might have shouted you up, but just in case. Jordan, thank you for the 37. Modis for the Prime. Horny Jail for Kaisa. Thank you for the 4 months. Can't Win Krillin, thank you for the Prime. And Raging Pianist, thank you for the 21 months. I love some of your ideas. I'm Moyo is here. I'm Moyo. Welcome to the show. Where are you calling from? Moyo?
Oh, I wonder if it did the thing where when I pull them in here, sometimes it breaks.
You want to go see it, pull them into a different chat or whatever? Okay. We're looking on the random Discord problems. A scam train has started. Thank you, Dior Homie for the Prime and Rune Caden for gifting the community sub. We're gonna see if we can keep the scam train going.
Take two on I'm Moyo.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Moyo. Where are you calling
Yeah, hello. Providence, Rhode Island.
Providence, Rhode Island. One of my first esports event I ever worked was MLG Providence, Rhode Island. What do you want to talk about in the show?
I want to talk about the fact that I think Dig have top 5-ish solo laners. And I think they're overall really misunderstood and misappreciated in terms of like the individual skill that they have on their team and how that makes them pretty unique relative to previous like full domestic teams that really didn't have that pound for pound carry potential and relied more on just macro or cheese or specific meta reads.
All right, I have to acknowledge
I
Switch
know.
chat right now because I didn't realize this when I was talking in the like test room. But like, my God, you sound like if Cutie Pie kind of like buttoned up, because he has like a very certain kind of like vernacular that he uses. But you sound a little like him if he like, I don't know, had to like give a presentation to Congress or something a little bit.
Yeah, you could definitely do that.
Yeah, I called in here before once, like a couple of years ago, and
Wow.
people made like a similar observation.
Yeah. People made a
Nice.
similar observation. Well, anyway, so why don't you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by, like, you were saying, just all their solo laners are really good.
Basically, Soligo actually has like top 3, top 4-ish laning stats, top 4-ish like DPM numbers. Fake God's like in a similar boat, and just like in the games, like if you watch them, like Soligo's played Jizuke twice, hasn't gotten outperformed by him in either game. He's played PoE twice, hasn't gotten outperformed by him in either game. And it's like when you're talking about who's actually gapped Soligo, it's like, oh, he got gapped by Perks, and he got gapped by Jensen. And it's like everyone else, it's like he's mostly performed equal to them or outperformed them. And it's like it's getting to a similar, like Fake God was shakier at the start of the split, but it's been like for a while now that it's like he just went head to head with Impact, who I think is like consensus top 3. And it's like he won Player of the Week. He had a massive performance. So it's like I don't really know at what point you're like you can really keep saying, oh well, it's like a fluke, it's like team play. It's like he solo killed Impact. Like how can you just deny like the fact, oh no, they're actually playing like mechanically well, they're playing these team fights well, they're taking team fights from terrible situations and they're still performing well. It's like they have like one of the highest combined kills per minute in the league, and they're tied for the second highest team KDA in the league, with Team Liquid only behind C9. So it's like they're playing a super fast-paced style. They're fighting literally everything they see. A ton of them are awful, like especially early game. They're just going on everything, losing every single time, and they're still managing to scale throughout the game and win mid and late game team fights, even against a team like TSM. Like, how are you going to be like, oh, these guys all suck mechanically, but somehow down 7k gold, they're taking a fight in jungle and just wiping TSM? So it's like, I don't know. I feel like the narrative should be like, these are really good mechanical players. These are guys that really know how to team fight. And the actual room for growth is macro and game understanding and knowing how to play around things besides Afro and Dardoch, just hard calling everything they engage, because they look pretty bad when Fake God's the one initiating it, when Soligo's the one initiating it. Like, those are like their main problems, is like objective setups and not being super reliant on the 2 veterans on the team to actually call when they're fighting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
Can you say Chapanya for Twitch chat?
Chapanya.
I'm gonna throw it over.
Oh,
to
sorry.
Emily.
All right. I realize what the problem with my mic is. Chapanya. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I just.
I'm gonna throw it to Emily first because Mark is very distracted by this.
I mean, I said this at the beginning when I was talking about how much I like Dig. One thing I think that needs to be considered when gauging the strength of their solo laners is, I think, like I said previously, they've kind of leveraged Dardoch's champ pool and champion select to make sure that Sligo and Fake God get champions that they're really comfortable with. That's not a criticism, by the way. I think it's actually a really good move, because it basically sets them up on something that they're really comfortable with from the get-go. So, like, for example, for those that didn't follow Sligo previously in Academy, he is an insane Azir player, actually. And then also he's an insane Zoe player. Fake God is very obviously incredibly comfortable on things like Renekton and Gnar. So I think they're doing a really good job of making sure that their solo laners have champions that they're really comfortable with. If there's anything that I think sometimes people underestimate, it's that champion choice matters a lot for younger players. Because if you're trying to execute something that's like really difficult, typically players, it just requires like a lot more. It puts a lot more stress on the players themselves, right? And Dignitas is not doing that. They're actually taking stress away, and they're like, okay, we're going to put you on stuff that you guys are obviously really comfortable on, and then we're just going to team fight constantly. I agree with your assessment that it's the team fight micro is good. They have the hands, and it's their macro they need to work on. They themselves have said this before, so I'm not really sure what. I don't like read Reddit all that often because I'm really fragile mentally, and so I don't want to see terrible comments about myself. So that's why I avoid it completely. But I don't know if this is a narrative that's going on because I've brought up the fact that Dignitas are really good at team fighting, but their mid-game macro needs a lot of work, and they themselves have also brought it up. So my question back to you would be, where is this narrative coming from? Because I actually think your assessment of Dignitas is like pretty spot on.
Just like almost everyone, like when you see like LS, Dom, Reddit, like almost everyone, it makes it seem like their players aren't actually good enough. When it's like, I just don't know how you can watch the way games are playing out and be like, oh, their players aren't skilled enough. So it's like, no, they make terrible decisions like within the game, but it's like, it's clear like every time they interact with enemy champions, like all these guys are mechanically good enough to go head to head with pretty much anyone, maybe short of like TL and C9, which are the two teams that I don't think they've beaten yet. So
I think, I mean, I'm probably a little bit more negative on their individual skill. Like, I actually think they're good. Like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, these guys are trash or anything like that. I think the top of the top, cream of the crop kind of guys, especially top lane, I feel like there's a deeper pool. Like mid lane, there's a lot of players in mid lane who are kind of NA players getting a shot. Insanity, Sligo himself, Ablaze Olive, Palafox, like, and I would say each of those guys has had moments where they look good, Sligo included as well. I think Pobe has just started playing again, so it's a little hard to rank him, but I would say most of those guys are better than RJS and even Damonte really was struggling. So like, I think, Sligo top 5 is something you could argue. Fake God, I have a little bit hard time arguing it. I think in terms of performance, maybe you can make that point, but like between Alfari, Huni, Impact, and someday I'm starting to get pretty squeezed to fit Fake God into top 5. But like at this point in the conversation, we're like, I'm struggling to argue that you're wrong. It's not like, what are you talking about? These guys suck. How could you say that? Like, which is still a lot better than it was at the top start of the year. And I don't think that they've hit their ceiling in any way. Like, I don't think this is the end all be all. So like, I think it's something where the strengths of this team are not like their laning anyways. So like a lot of people would traditionally look at some of Fake God's laning numbers and be like, yeah, well, okay, he's not that great. Even then, I think he's actually pretty average at CSD at 15. Yeah, he's negative.
I was going to actually say he's like 5th in gold difference at 10, and he's number 1 in experience difference at 10.
Yeah, and he's got a pretty good 4%, low jungle or middle jungle proximity. I'm just clicking through stats pretty quickly. Yeah, I think it's something where I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think people are pretty slow to update their opinions on people sometimes, especially with like perceived skill level with what's happening in the games. Like, I'm not saying you have to put Fake God top 5 even necessarily, but like you have to acknowledge what's happening, to your point, like he's not dying, he's not getting crapped on. There was that Someday game like a week and a half ago that a lot of people probably remember where Someday kind of got a massive CS lead on him. But like he's also had really good games, like his Gnar games and like his playmaking and stuff for Fake God. So like I'm ultimately with you. Like, I don't know if I was doing a skill power ranking, I'd put Fake God number 5, but like, damn if he's not putting up numbers,
I think it's also.
Oh, go ahead, Emily. I was just going to ask you, how about you? Because I know their take was that they're both top 5. Emily.
Oh, I wasn't going to talk about a ranking. I was just going to say, because actually I said this on broadcast when I had to do a top lane ranking. I think it's really weird to do a top lane ranking if you can't see pro view for laning, because more than any other position, I think top lane, because the long lane requires really, really strong laning. But the other thing is why I think a lot of people, I guess, quote unquote, undervalue Dignitas or undervalue their players, probably because a lot of times it's really easy to see opponents' mistakes. Like, for example, all of EG funneling into a choke point and just kind of allowing, Dig to continuously win these team fights. So I guess I can see where people are coming from that. But like, even in a single game format, I think what has to be recognized is that Dignitas is doing a really good job of making sure that their solo laners are comfortable, which can't really be underestimated, even if they do like have a really shaky early to mid game.
And I think, it's kind of like a lot of technology stuff, or even just any kind of acceptance based thing. There's like the early adopters, there's the people who get on at the height of like the acceptance, and there's the late adopters and all that stuff. I think you'll see a lot more people coming around if Dig has a good playoffs. Not even a great playoffs. Like, they can lose first round to TL, beat, I don't know, EG and losers or whatever, or what who knows what the playoff picture is going to be. But like, I think that would go a long way to kind of getting more people on board with Dignitas, is to not let the best of one excuse happen, not let the league sucks kind of excuse happen, because right now it's really easy to write them off. And I don't even necessarily write off cynics. Like, I'm a bit of a cynic, so like, I don't blame people for being like, well, I'll believe Dignitas when they actually do something impressive, because for a lot of people, regular season is almost a write-off.
Or play in a best of, because I mean,
right.
All the things I said about their drafting, I feel like they haven't really been like incisively challenged in draft. Like, no one's really been like, okay, we're gonna target these specific things, which is kind of why their solo laners have been allowed to be comfortable. So that's going to be a big challenge for this team, actually, in my opinion, is going to be going through a best of 5, and how they draft and how they adjust to what their opponents are doing.
Yeah. Moyo, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out before we move on to the next caller?
No, nothing. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the call, and hopefully Twitch chat and Mark were not too much of a distraction for you.
No, I had chat closed.
Thanks. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right. It is very funny. All right. Mark is headed off to get the next caller. I am Elvis4. Thank you for the 34 months. I'm just here for Emily appreciation as the comment. Smoke Dog, 23 months, coming up on 1 year. Thank you, Smoke Dog. B Crow Twitch for 6 months. Half a year. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Mark should be here in just a second. Ovely showing up in the chat to say Emily and spam a bunch of emotes. Hannah is here. Hannah, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland.
From Maryland?
Yeah, Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay, what do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, I think that Coach Daeny is ruining T1, and they need to start Faker and Cuz.
We don't normally do non-LCS takes too much, but I feel like having Emily here.
Because Emily is here, and it was Reddit drama. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot about this.
Could have had LS. All right, so
no, LS can't talk about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like he would be
the worst person.
Dude,
yeah.
that
I'm not the worst person, but like as a member of T1, I feel like he probably want to comment on it.
The Faker thread that was on the subreddit. I don't know if either of you saw that. Emily, I know you said you don't go.
I don't go to the subreddit.
But there was a big one where it was like, is Faker leaving SKT? And I think it was like either a translation or like a paraphrase of all this investigation that like Faker fans have done, where they're like, Faker normally isn't scrimming or isn't doing solo queue during SKT matches, but we found that he was doing solo queue, and then also At one point in time during one of their matches, a fan said that they saw him at a bus stop, and the bus line goes in front of his father's apartment, and so clearly he was like visiting his father during this game. I'm just like, oh my god, this is I'm borderline
Yeah.
uncomfortable with this.
I mean, I read FMK, which is like a pretty large Korean forum, and they know starting lineups for their announced. There's a lot of investigation going down, and people are like really, really upset that, you know, Clozer is consistently playing very poorly, or not very poorly, but he's not playing his Faker, and the team looks super, super lost. And Coach Yang or Daeny, he's like very insistent that, oh, we must play the rookies, we must develop them, but like Clozer isn't developing. He doesn't look any better than he did last year. You know, he's still bad. I mean, he's not bad, but he's still, you know, just as flawed as he is. And he got destroyed by Showmaker.
Hannah, we're having a little bit of feedback or echoes on your mic, so I'm gonna we're gonna take a break from talking with you. I'm gonna throw this over to Emily. Emily,
Sure.
and then maybe you can mute too, just to make sure we don't get the feedback. Emily, what's your assessment of the whole Faker SKT situation?
So this is what I mean when it's really difficult to run a 10-man lineup. And again, I think there are only a few teams that have been particularly successful with one. And it typically comes from having one player who has a very specific champion pool and then leveraging that against another player who has a very different champion pool and different style. And so I think that's where you could see, like, for example, I'm going to use RNG as an example, and not even Karsa and MLXG, but I think the styles and champ pools and the way that they treated Zatai and Let Me were very different. And so you could see why theoretically they would be like, we're going to play Let Me in this game where we want a weak side top who's going to be more like team fighter later, or we're just going to play Zatai because Zatai can literally play anything and he can just destroy this lane. And that requires a different attitude towards what you're going to be doing in that game. You kind of have to reset the entire team and have a different mindset going in terms of how you're going to play and how you're going to coordinate. So just from that baseline level, I think it's very difficult. And then you add the fact that, again, everyone wants to be playing, which I don't think is wrong. You know, if I'm on a team, I want to be starting and I want to be able to prove that I can start consistently. And so in order to do this, you need to have a very set expectation of what you want to do. Now with Faker, the weird thing about subbing him out is that I do not believe him to have champion pool issues. And if anything, if you look at their drafting last year when they were also subbing him out, they basically gave him a lot more complicated champions to play, not because he couldn't play the easy ones where they were giving counter picks for Clozer, but because they needed to rely on him more and kind of depend on him more because he is a better player, right? And so then you run into a lot of like, why are you having Faker play Galio? Why are you not giving him the counter pick and just having him take over the game, right? So I think it's really difficult with a player like Faker where he hasn't proven that he can't play anything. And so that's always difficult if you're still saying, okay, we're going to sub this player out who is the best player to ever play the game historically, and still can play most everything at a pretty high level. So that's really difficult. I'm not going to pretend to know what goes on in T1. I'm not going to sit here and like rip them apart, but I do think A, rotating roster is very difficult to have. B, if it's not working out, you maybe don't want to double down on it because it doesn't. And again, this is from a very outside perspective, but it doesn't seem like the players are happy. They've spoken out about it in interviews where they've said, we don't like the rotating roster. And that already, the fact that they are even willing to speak out against it in interviews says a lot. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at with T1. I don't think like, I don't want to come out and say like Daeny and Zephyr are ruining T1 because I think people had the same opinions of Coach Kim last year because he subbed out Faker for Clozer as well. And I have no idea about the investigation of Faker leaving T1 or whatever. But in terms of having a rotating roster, there are so many things you have to have in place, and so many it's really, really difficult. And if it's not pulled off successfully, then typically it tends to make everyone on the team miserable.
Yeah, I am generally anti 10-man roster, and even 6-man roster, though there are a couple more cases of that kind of working out. Sister teams are a totally different thing. Sister teams, I think, were great, but 10-man roster on its own doesn't seem to really work ever. And the times where these kinds of things do work, I always use more like the exception that proves the rule than, saying like this is something that should be pursued. It just has been attempted so many times with so many degrees of failure that I don't know why you would opt into it and be like, no, I'm going to be the guy who does it right. Everyone else did it wrong.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It just feels like such an uphill battle. It doesn't make sense in League on any level compared to traditional sports where it's like, okay, players get tired. Players can't play the entire game. You have a bench for a reason to sub people in.
The game never changes.
Well, the game, you mean over the course of a year?
In traditional sports, I'm saying there's no patches that I've heard that listed as one of the reasons why rotating players is not always the best idea because not only are they having to deal with switching between teammates, but they also have to update on meta changes and patch changes and champions and all that stuff.
I guess. I mean, it's a bit of a weird point there because on the one hand, you could argue that having a bench of players who can play the things should the meta change would actually be a reason to. But I would just argue that, you have to relearn all these new things with different players when you bring them in. That makes it a lot harder because, this guy likes to play this way, has this champ pool, he communicates this way, has these habits, this kind of stuff that you have to relearn every single time you want to do one of these substitutions and build that synergy up. And so I don't think any of the inherent obvious reasons from traditional sports exist. I don't think you're most players, the sword versus shield stuff that people talk about with the C9 when it was okay, you have a defensive player and the top lane's going to play tanks and weak side and then the aggressive counter pick guy for red side. Cool. But if you also just hard committed to one of those play styles and spent your entire practice time honing that, I would argue most of the time you end up a better team than half practicing two different styles.
Yep.
And it can work. I do think there's value sometimes for having the 6-man roster and just, Shy and Duke and, there's been a couple examples more of the 6-man roster, but the 10-man roster is just a big old swing and a miss most of the time.
Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, no, go. I was going to say, like I said, I think the only successful iteration I can really think of outside of people will probably point out T1 2015, I believe. But even then, they ended up kind of just having Faker learn how to be more of a selfless player, and then they just destroyed everyone at Worlds with Faker still in mid, right? So
yeah.
This is someone who's again, if you're looking at rotating a roster, why are you doing it? Typically you're doing it because you have someone who can't play a certain subset of champions in a meta that you want them to be playing those champions, right? But I can't see that argument for Faker ever. This is someone who's always been able to flex into whatever meta he's been in, right? So even if that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. I don't see a set reason as to why you would even attempt this. And when you have players coming out and saying they hate it, to then double down and say we're going to continue. And I believe even one of the coaches in an interview said, I didn't expect it to be this difficult. That's rough, I don't see why you don't just end the experiment there, settle on a starting 5 and play them.
I think it was Azael, because we were talking about this weekend during the LCS days. He was also, even when you point to that Easy Hoon Faker example as a success case, he pointed out that the roster ended after that year. Easy Hoon wanted to be a starter. So even in the successful case, the same thing happened with Ray and Impact. That kind of blew up. It's not really a long-term play usually, because even when you're successful, the guy is wait, if I'm good enough to be a starter playing this play style, yeah, why would I share time to not play my play style? And, so it doesn't even make sense really for long-term development.
Okay, here's my proposal for SKT. They can use it for free. they just in any time where the game is like they're in a match, a best of match, and it's going to match point, they field Faker until it goes to match point, and then they bring in Clozer to close out the series.
This is a terrible idea.
I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there. Anyway, Hannah, I'm unmuting you now. Sorry that you were muted, but we were getting some muting noises and stuff. Anything you want to any thoughts on any of the stuff that we've said?
I mostly agree. I mean, I have some more stronger opinions about it, but I understand that you probably shouldn't be like hard playing them. But I wish they would just like pick. Like, I think it's clear that Faker's better than Clozer. I think it's clear that Ellen should not be playing anymore. That Owner and Clozer better, and I wish they would just pick one of Teddy and Guma. But yeah, I'm sorry for my mic issues.
It's okay. Any shout-outs before we go on to our last caller?
Yeah, shout out Savannah, shout out Dong Ho, shout out Emily Rand and a different Emily I know. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time.
Bye. Bye.
Oop.
Nice one.
I did not mean to move them. So
Wow.
I had a caller who I pulled to talk C9, but then they never unmuted the entire time, so I just kicked them from the waiting room.
Well, we're
I
over time already. We got one more caller, right?
Yeah, so we'll just see the last one.
Mark is grabbing our last caller. I would shout out more subs, but nobody has subbed, so we'll just sit in this awkward silence. Nikluos is here. Nikluos, where are you calling from?
Santa Clarita, California.
Santa Clarita. You've been on before, yeah?
Yep, long-time viewer, couple times caller.
What do you want to talk about on the show?
I am watching this kid Neo on Dig, and I am so impressed with like how he's been playing this split on his first split, and I watch him play, and I'm thinking to myself, this kid reminds me a lot of how Doublelift would play, like how he pressures the lane, how much damage and kills he's putting out. I know this is premature, obviously, but I'm thinking like, who is gonna take the place of Doublelift as like their spiritual successor? And obviously this is this kid's first split, but I'm looking at this kid and he's passing the eye test for me. I put him on my fantasy league, and I'm in I'm in fantasy finals, like solely due to this kid, I'm pretty sure. So I feel pretty confident that he's gonna impress in the next couple of splits.
Here's my concern. I feel like people were really hyped on Tactical last year, and Emily and Mark, I kind of feel like Tactical is not looking so hot this year, right?
He had a really good start to the year and is struggling now.
And FBI, I feel like people are not singing his praises anymore either.
I think that's more a function of the team. I think FBI has been pretty good still. I would go to bat a little for FBI. On this caller's point though of Neo, he is playing very well, much better than I anticipated. But I just can't make a Doublelift comparison. I feel like they approach laning phase so differently. Neo does not seem particularly aggressive in laning phase. I think he follows up on plays well. Like, Afro is really good about spoon feeding people. Like, he did it with Cody, he did it with Johnson, he's doing it again here and coordinating with Dardoch and stuff. Like, he's great, and Neo plays really well. But like, Doublelift was so lane aggro and so trade focused, and like really worked hard at those kinds of things. And I just haven't seen Neo and Afro like doing that quite as much.
Yeah, they're not going to contest you over like every CS. And sometimes they make laning mistakes. I think where Neo is really shown for me is in his team fighting. His team fighting has been like surprisingly good, especially based on because like I had some pretty good expectations of Fake God and Sligo coming in because I felt like they'd grown a lot from the last time we saw them in LCS based on their academy performances. However, with Neo, I didn't have that same feeling, and he's like smashed every low expectation I've had of him. particularly in team fighting. So I think that's probably where Neo has impressed me, but I think I think he's still like comparatively inexperienced, and he still has like tremendous growth potential, especially with laning.
Oh, I thought Raz was popping off about our take. He's just fucking mad that he lost his.
Well, so he said in Twitch chat, somebody said, how did you get mod back? Because he had it gone for a while ago, and he said, I have dirt on Travis. So I just immediately unmodded him so I could remind him who provides the gift of modding to him, and then granted it back.
So real quick, like at CSD at 15, Neo is 0.1, so just kind of average. And his 4% is only 20%, which puts him bottom. He's 7th place, basically 8th place for it. And so, this isn't to say he's a bad laner. I just don't even think that they approach lane the same way. Like Doublelift, and he changed a little bit over the course of his career, but generally speaking, he was someone who wanted to fight you over CS, and he would scrap you for lane dominance. And I don't see that same approach. 4% is not a useful
does
stat.
have that? Because Nikluos' question was like, who's going to be the next Doublelift? So is there a different candidate?
I feel like FBI. For easy. He fucks you up in lane phase. He's really good at trading.
Emily?
Yeah. I feel like again, like sometimes I just have LPL brain where they will contest the wave and really shouldn't. There's no I would actually probably agree FBI would be the closest. I know like Doublelift would always look at LPL AD carries too, like just their laning, because he thought that their laning was like his ideal laning style, in terms of just contesting people constantly. So I feel like North America as a region doesn't really reward that either. So most people probably aren't going to play that way. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, that is what it is.
Yeah. Nikluos, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I noticed the same things about the lane phase, how Neo kind of excels more in the team fight mid to late game. But when I'm looking at the stats on Oracle's Elixir and what position Neo is in relative to FBI, it looks to me like Neo is doing a lot more with the resources he's given versus what FBI is doing in lane phase, the advantages he's getting, and what he's transitioning that into kills and participation.
That I think can be, and I'm not saying it is in his case, I'm looking now, but I know a couple of FBI's games are heavily skewed because of Fasting Senna.
Yeah, you have to pull out the Fasting Senna games when looking at lane stats. And in terms of kills, FBI is still 3rd, and he's number 1 in DPM. So these are not full pictures. I don't want to discredit Neo. Mm-hmm. I think he's been really, really good. I think 100 Thieves had a lot of struggles as well in skirmishes and team fights and stuff that I largely wouldn't put on FBI, though. I think he's FBI. I want to be clear too. FBI has made a lot of mistakes this split too. Like there was that game where they got TP'd on from behind and he's just hitting the turret and then dies. Don't want to make it seem like FBI is a god and it's not close, but I think I would still largely say FBI has been pretty good. And the mantle of Doublelift is not claimed by anyone yet.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we're still maybe a couple seasons or years from having someone as dominant as Doublelift, but I think this guy's passing the eye test, and FBI is definitely up there too for a contender.
Yeah. Hey, Nikluos, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to say before we move on to the last caller, because Mark was able to get the other person back?
Just want to shout out Alienware and Game Fuel for supporting one of the best content creators in the journalist scene for esports.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. All right. Mark's going to grab our last person who did manage to make it back. Raz having a heart attack in the chat about stats being used as main reasoning to rank players. Always upset, that man. Sash Bash 14, thank you for the sub. And then Austin Hirth gifted a sub to Spica. I'm sure Spica will be using my emotes religiously. Dahl is here. Dahl, where are you calling from?
Hey guys, I'm calling from Lewiston, Idaho.
Idaho. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I just want to talk about how what happened to Cloud9 this weekend. What are you guys' takes on that? And if they're still a top-ranked team in your guys' eyes?
Good question. I mean, I think a lot of people are really curious. I mean, this coming weekend, I feel like everyone's going to be looking at Cloud9 to be like, are they going to fall? Will they lose their first place position? I don't know. What do you think, Emily?
I think C9 are still a top team in my eyes. I think if you look at I'm pulling up their drafting just to remind myself. Like the mental bounce back that TSM had to have in order to beat them was really impressive, and I think TSM are also a pretty good team. I think when people talk about TSM this split, typically they have lock-in TSM still in their head when they think about this team facing off against other top teams in North America, but they've improved exponentially since then, especially in their communication. So I think that's also something to consider when you're looking at C9's loss to TSM specifically. And then they also lost to Team Liquid. So I don't think, like, in terms of RC9 a top team, I think definitely. Did I pick them to win both of those games? Yes, I did. But do I think it's like absolutely stunning that they lost in a single game format to TSM and Team Liquid, two teams that, despite Team Liquid's struggles, I also rate them really highly? No, I don't. I think the other big thing with C9 in some of these, they're obviously testing out the Caitlyn, which is interesting. I actually think Caitlyn's super strong. But I think you have to play a specific style with her, and maybe they were not as comfortable with that. I also think in this game against TSM specifically, if I remember correctly, that was the Blabber 4 buff game where he was just contesting like literally everything, like running through a wave to get to bot side scuttle. And I really loved that from him. They were not able to transfer that into mid and late game. So that's another thing that, I'm considering when I'm looking at it. But in terms of like our C9 plummeting to the ground, are they dead? When people think about that, I think they just have last year in their head. And so they're thinking like, oh, this is going to happen to C9 again. We've seen this before, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that will be the case for a few reasons. I think Perks is someone who is always really, or not always, because we have to think back to some of the early G2 phases, but like, in more recent years has proven to be someone who's like incredibly good under pressure, and someone who's incredibly flexible, and someone who can help lead a team through playoffs. I think C9, when you look at this team, have a generally strong amount of flexibility in draft, and they also consider who is on this team when they do draft, specifically what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I still have a lot of confidence in C9 going into best of fives, even with this past week. Maybe if they come out and go like 0-3 somehow, then I'll reevaluate that position. But right now, I'm not super, super worried about them, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw someone in Twitch asking about the draft a little bit. So to hop into that a little bit, like they're playing 4 range. Lilia, Victor, Morgana, Kate. You have no front line. All you can do is get to places first and set up. And the fact that they're 3K ahead means like they should have been able to do that. And I think that they were just really bad at actually forcing TSM through choke points and then punishing them when they tried to walk through it with Caitlyn traps and bindings and Victor gravity field and like the second Drake, which I think it was the second Drake, might have been the third Drake, but the one that C9 actually still got, I believe, or maybe Spica stole it, I forget. But like, he was able to sprint around through the choke point while other people were contesting from the bot side, and C9 actually didn't get anything off that. Their Baron situation, it was a similar thing. And then they mechanically misplayed a number of situations, like people talk about the Black Shield onto
Fudge.
Vulcan.
Mhm.
Nice try, Travis. Shot in the dark, 1 in 5. You missed. But I would say that they had a really difficult comp to play. Anytime you play one of these comps, they're super fragile. If the enemy gets on top of you and you don't actually control things correctly, you're just going to blow up. And that's what happened. I think that they just played it pretty poorly from ahead. And I don't think this is really the style that they're going to be playing I think they're a mostly proactive team. They want to be making plays, but they pick triple carry kind of multiple times in a row. The other game against TL was Caitlyn, Azir, and GP, which is just another kind of like more passive scaling zone control team. And then Gragas didn't even build tank in that one when he played Gragas. He played Protobelt into Void Staff. So he was still going damage in that one too, which was also weird. So like I think that they were branching out with their drafts, trying new things because they can always play the more aggressive style. And it didn't work. And I don't think that that's a death knell to them at all.
So it sounds like concerns about C9's fall are a little overstated. I guess Emily and Mark, what happens this weekend if C9? I should look at their schedule. So they play CLG, should be relatively easy. Dig and Immortals. So they should have a easier schedule this weekend. So I mean, if they what would you guys expect them to go 3-0?
I would expect it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to Dig necessarily, but it would be an upset still.
So what if they lose 2 of those games? Do you then should C9 fans then start panicking?
Are they still running different compositions?
I don't know.
That would be my other question. Like, I think it also depends on like what they look like. Like if they lose a really close game to IMT where IMT comes in with one of these drafts that they've obviously like prepared specifically for this game and they know exactly how to execute and it's still a really, really close game. I'm not going to take that as much of a loss as them like fumbling something that they're really comfortable with.
And we think they're just playing these different comps because they're pretty secure in the positions.
I mean, I also think it's good to learn ranged comps, despite the fact that they're more difficult. Like, I have, if you ever hear me go on Kelsey's stream as well, like, I'm pretty critical of LPL teams that constantly rely on, like, really, really short range comps. I think being able to play ranged compositions, especially now with the way that the AD carry meta has shifted, is really good. So I don't fault them for trying that.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Maybe they have bad reads on the meta. Maybe this is them thinking that this is the optimal way to play, and this is how they have to play, and then they're gonna suck again or something. But I don't think that's the case. I think Vulcan can go back to playing, melee supports and engagers, and Fudge can play weak side tanks. I mean, Nara's kind of like that, but I think that there's a lot of I don't think you need to put perks on control mages. Yone's still fine. I love the Yasuo comp that they built that one time. Put him on Triss mid. I don't give a shit. Like all those things are still good. So I'd be surprised if they just hard pivoted out of the way of that.
No.
Anyway, podcast listeners are very concerned.
I know. They're like, why is there this awkward pause? If there's ever an awkward pause, it's probably just Mark and the cat.
Dahl,
it's really...
Dahl, what do you think of all this?
I don't know. I thought you guys would be a little bit more affected by what happened this weekend. I don't remember if it was TSM or TL that they were facing, but they had the 3-0 lead in the beginning. And they just absolutely threw it and ended up losing it. It just blew my mind. I didn't think that was possible. I don't really necessarily like Sven on the Caitlyn. I think he has better ADCs, but I don't know. I just thought you guys would be a little bit more affected, to be honest.
I think they're just
diamond hands. Yeah. That's my answer.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Dahl. Anything you want to shout out before we close out the show?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Just Alienware and G Fuel. Bought the snow cones.
Game Fuel. Game Fuel.
It's pretty good stuff. G Fuel.
Game Fuel. Still Game Fuel.
Game Fuel.
Game Fuel. Still same stuff. But
G Fuel is a
Gotta get that
inferior
market.
product, but I understand the confusion. But anyway, thank you, Dahl. I really appreciate you shouting them out.
Shout out Hydrostar and Remy Timmy. Those are two of my boys.
Very good. Well,
Have
thank
a
you.
good night, guys.
Thanks
for hanging on.
Thank you so much, Dahl. Have a good one.
You too, man. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. Emily,
This
what do
is
you got?
very concerning. Sorry, I keep getting people on the podcast are going to be like, why does she keep just sitting there giggling to herself like a moron? And it's because of all of the zooming and
Travis trying to
weird
keep my
gymnastics to try to censor the cat.
Mark, what do you got for us? Plugs, shout outs, whatever.
Nothing. Shout out my little baby boys, little cute baby boys.
Ugh. Why does everybody I know suddenly everybody has those like cat mounts on the wall? Like you guys have one of them now. I watch girlfriend reviews, they have one. I feel like cat mounts are all the rage.
I don't know. I just my cats. So the reason I got one was because our litter box is in the corner here, and my cat, the orange one, wanted to chill with me when I was in here doing broadcast, and he would lay on the like mat that he wipes his paws on because it's the softest thing nearby. And I was like, dude, that's gross. So I got him a wall mount so he could lay on top of something while I'm working and watch me. That's what he's sleeping on right now. Because otherwise he'd be on the floor.
Great. Emily, what do you got to shout out?
I guess you can follow me on Twitter at League of Emily. I'm not always super active because social media terrifies me. But yeah, I'll have hopefully some more writing and some other announcements in the next few weeks. And that's about it. I don't have anything else to plug except my analyst desk work.
Very good.
You know what? I never shout out my Twitter. I'm going to shout it out. If you're not following me, yet you watch this show, I don't know what the fuck you're doing, but time to follow me. I want to get to 100K. I'm not that far off.
Where are you at?
I'm not even close to 30.
I haven't like grown it. You know how you gave me that shout out? They're like, let's get Mark to 100K when I was like 95K, and I was like, that's a little premature.
You're at 97.6 now.
Yeah, but it's a slow rise to 100K.
I love that your pin tweet is still the Brandon Sanderson interview.
It's probably gonna be up there for a long time.
I'm trying to get 210K on YouTube, and I've just been like stalled out on the YouTube. I think there's a lot of people that don't follow League anymore, and so when I suddenly hit them with like 18 videos in 1 week, they're like, okay, I gotta unsubscribe to this person, because I do get a lot of people subscribing to the channel, but I think there are some people that are unsubscribing. Probably people that subscribed to the channel like a decade ago and are now like, I'm done with this. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, I think a really great interview that I did this past weekend was the one with Sword Art. It's on Reddit right now. It's on my channel. He talks about how Core JJ is his biggest enemy, and he throws some shade his way by saying like, yeah, he won Worlds during the Ardent Censor meta. And
oh shit!
And when we play against him, he really likes to tell his jungler to come bot. So there's some good stuff in there, and then he also has like, he's just really articulate. You know, like I think a lot of people would say, oh well, you know, like he just moved over here. How great can his English be? But his English, I think, is quite good, and his answers are fantastic. And it's almost a 20-minute long interview. So highly recommend people check it out, because I think it is one of my favorites that I've done this year. So anyway, thanks to Emily for coming on the show. Thanks to Mark
for having me.
For always doing the show. And shout out to Alienware and Game Fuel. Be sure to check out all of our stuff and our Twitters. This has been Hotline League episode 160. I'm pretty sure it's 162. We're just going to go with 160. It's Hotline League episode 163. This has been Hotline League episode 163. Thanks for watching.